Why barriers to entry matter, what keeps new businesses out and big companies in. Discover why barriers to entry make starting a business tough, how they affect industries, and what you should know about competition and market challenges. Understanding barriers to entry, why starting a business isn't always easy. You ever wonder why some markets seem almost impossible to break into, even when you have a great idea or product? That's where the concept of barriers to entry comes into play. It's basically the stuff that stops or slows down new competitors from joining an industry or a market. And trust me, these barriers aren't just about having some startup cash. They can be quite complex and sometimes downright sneaky. Let me explain this in a way that makes sense over a cup of coffee. So, what exactly are barriers to entry? At the simplest level, barriers to entry are factors that make it tough for a new company to enter a market. Think of them as hurdles or walls you have to get past before you can really compete. These can be cost-related, legal, technological, or even related to customer habits. High startup costs. Some markets require huge upfront investments. For example, manufacturing plants or building telecom networks don't come cheap. Economies of scale. Big companies often get to produce at lower costs because they're so large. That makes it tricky if you're a newcomer who can't match those prices yet. Brand loyalty. If people trust and stick with big brands they know, convincing them to switch to a newcomer can be a real challenge. Access to distribution. In some industries, controlling the supply chain or shelf space in stores is vital. Without that access, new entrants struggle to get visibility. Government regulation and licensing. This is a big one. Sometimes laws or regulatory red tape make it expensive or even impossible to start up. That's where things like patents, environmental restrictions, or local licenses come into play. Why should you care about barriers to entry? Imagine you want to start a new soda company to take on the big players. The first challenge isn't just making a tasty drink, it's getting your product into stores, getting customers to trust you, and dealing with the huge marketing budgets that Coke or Pepsi have. Even if your soda is amazing, breaking into that market is tough because of all these barriers. And this isn't just about soda. Look at tech giants or pharmaceutical companies. The stakes are huge, and these companies often use barriers to entry to keep competitors out. Sometimes this can lead to unfair advantages. People even throw around ideas about government conspiracy or untrue allegations when a company seems to have an unfair edge. For example, pharmaceutical profits are often a hot topic. Critics say the industry uses patents and regulations as barriers to keep competition out and prices high. Are all barriers to entry bad? Not necessarily. Some barriers are there for safety and quality reasons. For example, you want to make sure a new airline meets strict safety protocols before it takes off. Otherwise, passengers could be at risk. So, regulations can serve as protective measures, not just obstacles. But the line gets blurry when companies or governments use these barriers to limit competition rather than protect consumers. That's when the drama starts. Complaints, lawsuits, and loud debates about ethics and economics. It's also why being aware of these barriers matters for entrepreneurs, consumers, and regulators alike. How do businesses get around barriers to entry? It's not all doom and gloom. Smart entrepreneurs find creative ways around these barriers. Maybe they introduce a new tech innovation that changes the game. Or they find a niche market where customer loyalty isn't as strong, or regulators aren't as strict. Sometimes partnerships and collaborations can help, or focusing on superior customer service and brand building can cut through brand loyalty. It's about being flexible and strategic. Final thoughts. Next time you hear about a new startup struggling or a giant company seeming untouchable, think about these barriers to entry. They shape how markets work and how competitive or stagnant they might be. And speaking of stories about complicated systems and twists, if you want a gripping read blending intrigue and suspense, check out The Ultimate Frame by Andrew M. Semple. It explores layers of secrets and reveals how sometimes things aren't quite what they seem. Discover this thrilling novel today and get lost in a narrative that keeps you guessing. Visit bookauthor.com for more. All right, thanks for hanging out and chatting about barriers to entry today. Next time you think about starting something new or question why some industries stay the same, you'll understand the hidden walls we all face.